Welcome to this in-depth exploration of one of the most volatile aspects of modern geopolitics. Oil blockades and tanker seizures. In a world where energy is power, these incidents aren't just maritime mishaps, they're potential sparks for global conflict. Today, we'll uncover the history, the recent escalations, and the burning question. Are these blockades and seizures the real reasons behind wars, or are they symptoms of deeper struggles for control? Stick around for 30 minutes as we break it down. Let's dive in. Oil is the lifeblood of the modern world. It powers economies, militaries, and everyday life. But controlling it means controlling the sea's vast oceans, where tankers carry billions of barrels annually. When nations blockade shipping routes or seize vessels, it's not just about the oil on board. It's about economic warfare, strategic dominance, and sometimes outright provocation. Consider this. In December 2025, the U.S. seized the MT Skipper, a sanctioned tanker leaving Venezuela, as part of an escalating naval blockade. Just days later, reports emerged of U.S. forces pursuing Russian-flagged vessels in the North Atlantic. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps IRGC stormed tankers in the Strait of Hormuz, claiming they were smuggling fuel. And in the Red Sea, Yemen's Houthis have launched over 60 attacks on ships since 2023, sinking vessels and rerouting global trade. These aren't isolated events. They're part of a pattern called tanker wars, conflicts where oil shipping becomes a battlefield. But why? Is it really about the oil? Or is it a cover for bigger agendas like regime change, sanctions enforcement, or regional hegemony? By the end of this video, you'll have the tools to decide. We'll start with history. To understand the playbook, then examine today's flashpoints, and finally analyze the real reasons behind it all. To grasp today's tensions, we must look back. Oil blockades and tanker seizures have ignited or escalated wars for decades. Let's start with early examples. In 1956, the Suez Crisis erupted when Egypt nationalized the Suez Canal, a vital artery for European oil from the Middle East. Britain, France, and Israel invaded. But the real trigger, fear of an oil blockade. The US and USSR intervened, forcing a withdrawal, but it showed how choking oil flows could redraw global alliances. Over 100 ships were blocked, spiking prices and exposing Western vulnerabilities. Fast forward to World War II. Naval blockades were weapons of starvation. Germany's U-boats targeted Allied oil tankers in the Atlantic, sinking hundreds and nearly crippling Britain's war effort. The U.S. responded with convoys and anti-submarine warfare. But the lesson was clear. Control the tankers, control the war. But the archetype of modern tanker conflicts is the 1980s tanker war during the Iran-Iraq War. Let's break it down step by step. The Iran-Iraq War began in 1980 when Saddam Hussein's Iraq invaded Iran, aiming to seize oil-rich territories. By 1984, both sides were desperate. Iraq, backed by the US and Gulf states, started attacking Iranian oil facilities and tankers to cut Tehran's revenue. Oil funded 90% of Iran's war machine. Using French-made Exocet missiles, Iraqi jets hit over 200 ships, many neutral. In the Persian Gulf, Iran retaliated fiercely. They mined shipping lanes, used speedboats for hit-and-run attacks, and targeted tankers bound for Iraq's allies like Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. The Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of global oil passes through a 21-mile-wide channel, became a kill zone. Mines damaged vessels, insurance rates skyrocketed, and oil prices fluctuated wildly. Enter the United States. In 1987, Kuwait asked for protection, reflagging its tankers under the U.S. banner. This led to Operation Earnest Will, the largest naval convoy operation since World War II. U.S. warships escorted tankers, but tensions boiled over. In April 1988, the USS Samuel B. Roberts hit an Iranian mine, nearly sinking. The U.S. retaliated with Operation Praying Mantis. In one day, American forces destroyed 2 Iranian oil platforms, sank a frigate and gunboat, damaged another frigate, and killed 57 Iranians. 2 U.S. Marines died in a helicopter crash. The tanker war ended with the broader conflict in 1988, but not before 546 civilian ships were attacked. 430 mariners killed, and billions in damages. It proved that tanker seizures and blockades aren't just economic tools. They drag superpowers into direct confrontation. Iran learned to use asymmetric tactics like mines and proxies, a playbook still in use today. Other historical flashes. In 1990, Iraq's invasion of Kuwait was partly about oil fields, leading to the Gulf War. UN sanctions blockaded Iraqi oil exports, crippling their economy, and in 2019, Iran's seizure of the British tanker Stena Impero was retaliation for the UK detaining an Iranian vessel off Gibraltar tit for tat. Over sanctions, history teaches us. These incidents rarely stay contained. They escalate because oil is existential. Blockades starve economies. Seizures humiliate nations. And both invite retaliation. Now, let's see how this plays out in 2023 to 2026. Fast forward to today. Since 2023, tanker incidents have surged, fueled by wars in Ukraine and Gaza, plus US sanctions on rogue states. Let's dissect the key arenas. First, the Red Sea and Houthi attacks. Yemen's Iran-backed Houthis began targeting ships in October 2023. Solidarity with Palestinians amid the Israel-Hamas war, using drones, missiles, and speedboats. They've hit over 60 vessels by March 2024, sinking 2, including the Ruby Mar in February 2024, and killing at least 4 crew. Targets: ships linked to Israel, the US, or allies, though many are neutral. By 2025, attacks waned briefly, but resumed. In September, a missile struck an Israeli-linked tanker near Saudi Arabia's Yanbu. Houthis threatened US crude carriers in May 2025. Impact: hundreds of ships rerouted around Africa, adding 10 to 14 days and millions in costs. Oil prices rose 15 to 20%, and insurance for Red Sea transit jumped 300%. The US-led Operation Prosperity Guardian escorted vessels, but strikes on Houthi sites in Yemen escalated the cycle. Second, Iran's actions in the Strait of Hormuz. Tehran has seized multiple tankers since 2023, often citing smuggling or retaliation. In April 2023, IRGC forces took the Marshall Islands-flagged Advantage Suite. May 2023, another seizure in the Strait. By 2025 to 2026, incidents intensified. November 2025, Iran grabbed a tanker, releasing it days later. December 2025, a foreign vessel with 25,000 barrels of smuggled fuel was stormed near Keshem Island. Crews are often detained, ships held for months. These aren't random. They're responses to US sanctions on Iranian oil, which cut exports by 80% since 2018. Iran uses seizures to deter enforcement and assert control over the strait, where it threatens to block all traffic if provoked. Third, US-led blockades and seizures, especially against Venezuela and Russia. Since 2019, US sanctions targeted Venezuela's PDVSA to pressure Maduro's regime. Oil is 58% of their budget. By 2025, a full naval blockade escalated. December 17, 2025, US forces seized the MT Skipper after it left Venezuela with sanctioned cargo. Weeks later, 2 more tankers, including the Russian-flagged Marinera, formerly Bella 1, were taken in the North Atlantic, pursued by US ships amid Russian submarine shadows. Russia condemned it as piracy, but the US says it's enforcing sanctions against evasion networks. Meanwhile, Ukraine has blown up Russian Shadow Fleet tankers with sea drones. November 2025 hits in the Black Sea. December, strike on the Dasan. These dark fleets evade sanctions by turning off trackers, using fake flags. In January 2026, reports show 16 sanctioned tankers fleeing Venezuela despite the blockade, and US seizing a 5th vessel. The elite. Tensions with Russia and Iran are boiling. Could this lead to direct clashes? These events disrupt global supply. Oil prices hit $90 barrel in late 2025. Shipping costs soared, and economies from Europe to Asia felt the pinch. So, are oil blockades and tanker seizures the real reasons behind wars, or masks for deeper motives? Let's analyze. On the surface, yes, they're direct triggers. In the 1980s, tanker attacks prolonged the Iran-Iraq war and pulled in the U.S. Today, Houthi strikes have drawn US-UK airstrikes on Yemen, expanding the Gaza conflict. Iran's seizures challenge US dominance, risking naval showdowns. US actions against Venezuela. Russia enforce sanctions, but invite one of tit-for-tat seizures, leading to broader confrontations. But dig deeper. The real reason is often power and economics, not just the tankers themselves. Oil funds where Russia's Ukraine invasion relies on oil revenue, 50% of budget. So Ukraine's drone strikes aim to bankrupt Moscow. US blockades on Venezuela aren't about oil theft. They're regime change tools, starving Maduro of funds. Houthis use attacks for leverage against Saudi US, while Iran projects strength amid isolation. Critics argue it's all about hegemony. The US, as a global cop, uses seizures to maintain dollar-dominance oil, traded in USD. Conspiracy theories. Some say wars like Iraq, 2003 were for oil, despite official denials. In 2026, with climate shifts and energy transitions, these incidents could be last gasps for fossil fuel control. Ultimately, tankers are proxies. Blockades weaponize interdependence, hurt your enemy's wallet without full invasion. But they risk miscalculation. A sunk tanker could spark World War III in choke points like oil blockades and tanker seizures have shaped history and could define our future. They're not just about fuel, they're about survival in a resource-scarce world. As tensions rise in 2026, watch the seas. The next war might start with a seized ship. What do you think, is oil the real reason, or something more? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more deep dives. Thanks for watching. Stay informed. Stay safe.